Hi again, everyone. We're back again. I'm going to give this another try. Thank you to those who commented and sent messages. Let's do it again. Let's see how we keep going with a word from the Word. Just going to share a quick Bible thought with you today. Before I do that though, just some of the messages I got back. It seems there's probably a few people that I got in contact with through this video last week that we haven't been in contact with for a little while and have been asking a few questions about what's been going on in Chelsea in my life, and thought I'd just quickly update you and let you know. It's a bit easier to do it all in one video than reply to every person. So yeah, we're still living in the same place. We're still in Capalaba, haven't moved anywhere yet. Chelsea's still at the same school that she was teaching at when we were back at Birkdale just after we got married, and she's been teaching there for a few years now, and that's been good and solid for us just to have that routine for her. Obviously COVID and all those different things with school lockdowns and all that have been trying, and there's been some challenges there, but got through that okay. I'm working in a petrol station at the moment, so that's been different. Actually, it's not too different. It's a bit of a callback for me. I used to work in a petrol station back when I was in university some 20 years ago. So I've been doing that, and though probably not what I felt I'd be doing at 40 years old, has actually given me some good opportunities in the community just to be a bit of a different kind of impact there. But also it's given me a lot of time to continue my work with the football club as their sports chaplain, which has been great. It's been really cool to be able to spend a bit more time, get a bit more involved, have a bit more time at different multiple training sessions during the week, and get out and have coffee and catch up with some of the boys, get involved in some of the other teams that are within the club as well, so some of the junior teams, some of the women's teams, things like that. And it's been really cool to see the impact that chaplaincy has been able to have on this football club. And for me as well, just to have an outlet where I can think in a ministry way. I can think about things for caring for people and doing things that I'm passionate about, things that as I said last week, I feel I'm gifted in. And so it's been able to do that, which has probably kept me going and kept me sane. In all of that though, yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing great. It's been tough. It feels like a bit of a wilderness time where I haven't been in ministry. We're wondering what's next still. We're still on the lookout for that, and without any kind of clear idea. Yeah, sometimes it felt like we've just been wandering around in the wilderness. We're committed to a local church, Baptist church here in the coast side of Brisbane, and we've been getting involved there. I've been playing drums and working on the coffee cart, and if you know me, that's two things I love to do, and so it's been good to, in a sense, have a bit of a rest, not be the pastor who is in charge and responsible for all these different things within the church, and just to simply turn up and hit a few drums or make a few coffees. That's been really cool. Chelsea's gotten involved as well on the welcoming team, and we're part of a home group and all those different things, which has been really good for us just to spend some time to take a break from leading different ministries and just be part of them. And that kind of leads me to where I wanted to sit with the Bible verse that I wanted to share with you today. And it's one that I think even in the past week has really been resonating with me and coming back to this idea of what God might be doing with this time, as we've been through a tough time, we've been through a struggling time, and still at the moment there's no actual definitive end in sight. And so this is a bit of an encouragement to me, I guess, as I've been rolling around with this verse, but I thought I'd share it and have a quick chat as we do this word from the Word today. From John 15, and that's a pretty famous passage. It's one of Jesus's I am statements, and I just thought I'd read the first few verses of chapter 15, the book of John, to you now. This is Jesus talking, and he says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. I mean, this is one of those big verses that really shows us, and there's so much in it about telling us who Jesus is, who we are as Christians, and what we need to be. But today I just want to take a few little points out, I guess, that really have been impacting me personally, practically, over the last few weeks and months. But this idea is there's the big general idea of what Jesus calls us to be as Christians, that he is the vine, we are the branches, that he is the life giver, and we are to be attached to him. The word that Jesus uses is we are to abide in him. That's this idea, this word abide means to co-inhabit with, to live with, to do life with, to dwell with. I think that's probably the literal word of the Greek word that is used here to abide, is to dwell with. And that's not just this idea of co-inhabiting and living in the same space but not interacting. I think about it, and I think about Chelsea and I now. We abide here in this home together because we don't just live in separate rooms. We don't just do our own thing and not interact too much. We share everything. We abide with one another. We share meals together. We talk about our days. We share our own stories. We share our lives together. We sit and watch TV together. We play games together. We do all these different things because we're abiding. We're living with one another. And that's what Jesus is calling us to do as Christians. And really, that in this passage, it's really all that he's calling us to do. As a Christian, what he wants us to be is abiding with him, living with him, dwelling with him, doing life with him. In other parts of the Bible, he says, come follow me. And in other parts, he says, go and tell people. And so he calls us to him, he sends us out. But I think in all of that, this verse and this idea of the vine and the branches is over the top of that, where as we follow him, as we go out, we're called to abide and be with and do life with. And that's a pretty simple and easy thing to remember, I hope, in our lives. And the thing that I want to sort of push down into today and just have a quick chat about and think about is this idea of the Father's role in this illustration that Jesus is giving us. And so we know that God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, that there's this big picture idea of who God is as the Trinity, as the three people in one and the one person in three. And that's a way too big a topic to try and tackle in one of these videos. But let's just say that this is part of who God is in our lives, that Jesus is the vine. He is our life giver. He is our source of life. Just as a branch that isn't connected to the vine withers, dies, and is useless. It has to be connected in the vine for it to keep getting that life-giving thing. Jesus is the one that gives us that life. But what does Jesus say about the Father? He says about us, he says, I am the vine, you are the branches. But he also says there in verse 1, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. He's the farmer. He's the one that tends to the vine. If you've ever been out to a vineyard, done one of those wine tours or things like that, and you've seen how the grapes are grown, it's an interesting process, isn't it? They have to be all lined up in the best way so they can grow in the best way. They need to be tended and cared for, and you see the vine dressers or the farmers are out there pruning and making sure that everything's growing the way it needs to, so it can yield the best crop, so they can make the wine and make their money and do everything like that. But this is the role that Jesus is saying God the Father plays, that the Father is the vine dresser. He is the one that goes and he looks, and it says there that every branch that isn't bearing fruit, like a good farmer would, he cuts it off and takes it away. And we learn later that the ones that don't bear fruit, they're only good for what? They're only good for being thrown into the fire and burned. But then the one that's interesting to me is that every branch that does bear fruit, it doesn't say the vine dresser goes, oh, good job, and leaves it alone. You go grow and keep producing fruit. No, what does it say that the God the Father does? It says that he prunes it so that it bears more fruit. And as I've been thinking about this in my life, I felt that this time over the last 12 months or so has been a pretty big pruning time. And some of those things are things that I may have developed in my life that weren't too helpful. Ideas of what it actually means to be a leader in the church and what status that gives me. Maybe there were some pretty unhealthy thoughts I had about that, and they've been pruned away during this time. And so these ideas of who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing for God have been pruned. There's been sinful habits and different things in my life that I think I'd let creep in that became more apparent. when I suddenly had more free time on my hands, when I had less things to motivate me to go and do, I found out that I'm inherently much more lazier than I probably thought I was. And there's a few other things as well. And so as I've noticed those things, I've been trying to prune them out of my life. And I think God's been helping me prune those out of my life. And we think of that and we think pruning is not something that we want to go through, not something that we could enjoy too much. And look, for the last week, after the video I made on last Monday, I went out and I started pruning my garden. I've had a week of absolutely going through our yard here at Capalaba. I've borrowed my dad's trailer. I've got another bit of an illustration idea about that I'm going to probably do next week with a verse. But this idea of just going through our yard and all of these trees that were so overgrown, that needed to be pruned so they could continue to grow well. I mean, if you ask my wife, you'll hear that when I prune, I'm a bit of a ferocious pruner. I actually got a text message from her one day. I sent her a few photos of what I'd done, and her reply was, "Where's the rest of my garden?" And so my reply to that obviously was, it's in the trailer ready to go to the dump. But this idea that to prune means we're going to take a lot away. The tree is actually going to look pretty bare for a little while because it's been cut right back. But because of that, it's going to allow it to grow. It's going to become a healthier tree. It's going to become a healthier garden. It's going to become what it should be because of the work that's been put in by the person doing the pruning. And so as I think about that in my life, and as we think about that in context of this verse, I think we should be happy with the fact that God prunes. Pruning can hurt. Like, I mean, I look at some of the trees outside at the moment, and they look pretty miserable at the moment. And that must be painful. I mean, not that I think trees feel pain or anything like that, but there must be it's a painful process as things are cut off. But the growth that comes from that is really healthy. And that's what it is in our lives as well. And as I said, these last 12 months, there's been so much in my life that's been painful. But I'm seeing, and I'm starting to begin to see the progress of what that might mean, that I've had these things pruned out, that I think when I finally get another position, when I move into a pastoral role, I'm going to have a much healthier idea of what it means to be a pastor because of this time I've been through now, where I've had so much of in my life pruned out. And I just want to finish with one final verse, because it sort of resonates with this idea of being pruned, being painful, but being worthwhile. And it's from the book of Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11. And I'm just going to read it here because I've got it actually memorized, one of these memory verses from when I was a teenager, but I've memorized in the NIV and I'm being using the ESV, so it's a bit different. So just let me read it to you. This is Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11. It says, "For the moment all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." And isn't that just a beautiful picture? Just this idea that, yes, there is this recognition that discipline, that the pruning in our lives seems painful rather than pleasant. That these things happen and we have to deal with them. But later, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. And we can look forward to that when we feel we're being pruned, we feel there's stuff going on in our life. We can look forward to this idea and this hope that later on, as long as we're trained by it, as long as we take note of it and we learn from it, it's going to produce a fruit of righteousness in our lives. I know that's my hope at this time, and I've already started to see that. And my hope for you is that if you're going through something as well, that this is something that you can grasp onto and say, wow, I'm going to push into that, because even though this discipline, even though this pruning, even this time in my life at the moment might feel painful, it's going to produce a harvest of righteousness and peace. What a great thought.